in the woods with thunder moose. Although it's hot, there's mosquitoes, it's humid. But today I want to talk about RPGs. And where it started. Blackmoor. Do you think you might buy something just because I said that I liked it? Well, I didn't buy it myself. It was sent to me by the Fellowship of the Thing. This is the company that brought you the movie, The Secrets of Blackmoor, and the rediscovered, long lost Dungeons of Tonisborg. And the thing that I have to talk about to you this week is a book called The Foundations of Blackmoor. And reading this book is a very unique experience for me. I am somewhat fascinated with the history of this hobby as someone who's come to it lately. How did role-playing games get started? How did Dungeons and Dragons, there's a lot of mosquitoes out here. How did Dungeons and Dragons come to be the thing that we know of it as today? And what if you could go through a museum that had curated exhibits of some of the major signposts along the way? And then further, what if you, in attending that museum, had a curator or a guide who could walk you through each of the exhibits with firsthand personal knowledge, having talked to and been friends with and interviewed the people involved? Well, here is that product. Blackmoor Foundations. Now listen, your good old buddy Dundermoose is on vacation, so I don't have my normal rig. So I'm gonna try this just handheld. But I'm really enjoying this book. I am not gonna just do a full-on flip through because you guys gotta buy it if you want to see everything that's in here. I just want to show you some of the things that stuck out to me as I was reading it. First of all, on page 1 here, this last paragraph, play proceeds, this section, it starts off with a quote from Robert J. Kuntz, all roads lead to Blackmoor. And that is significant. As you read the whole thing, you know, it kind of begins and ends with that mindset that how much of the hobby came from Gygax, how much of it came from Arneson. After reading this book, I posit to you that you will think differently than maybe you did before. So the first part is Griff kind of taking us through an introduction to what the material is, what's in here, and not just the content, but the historicity of it. But I do want to pick a quibble with this last paragraph on page 1. He's talking about what this new game was, this Blackmoor. Play proceeds as a back and forth between the referee, who describes the game reality, and the players who interrogate the referee about their situation, or even change the game reality through their described actions. It is a recursion which goes on as long as the game is being played. Additionally, there is no winning or losing, since the game reality is a, quote, living world, with play stopping at the end of a game session and then resuming in the exact same place in the narrative the next time the players gather to play. So I don't know about this paragraph, especially the no winning, no losing, especially the pausing. To me, from what I can, again, Griff knows way more about this stuff than I do, so take my opinions with a grain of salt. But it seems to me that a lot of, like, OD&D, AD&D, there's a bunch of sources from when this stuff was starting off that make it seem like there wasn't a pause, that there was continual game world progression, whether you were playing at the table or not. And even in this book, there's a reference to that. The year in Blackmoor is basically the current year, but instead of a 19 in front of it, it's a 10. So 1071 is stuff that took place in 1971. So we know they were doing one-to-one at least years. I don't know about days, weeks, months. There's more in here talking about that, but that is just one of my first quibbles. You know, page 1, I was like, is that right? I'm not sure. I will defer to people that know much more than me on that, but you know me, you know my take on things. The crew that I fell in with goes more along the lines of that the living world continues to live whether the session is going on or not. So let's go on to page 3, and this is like how the book is. You'll get a historical document, you'll get photographs or mimeographs or whatever this is called of the actual original document, which is what I described as like the museum piece. And then on the facing page, you'll get an overview from Griff, who is friends with, has interviewed, has talked to, knows the people involved. If you haven't yet seen the inimitable Secrets of Blackmoor, do yourself a favor and watch that documentary. It is amazing. It's good. This stuff is good. What was it on this page I wanted to point out? Okay. The document is quite possibly the very first time Arneson writes about Blackmoor as a proposed role-playing military campaign game where each player rules over a small kingdom with various negotiations conducted via diplomacy, or if that failed, a tabletop miniatures battle would be used to resolve conflicts. Now, what does that remind you of? Let's jump down a paragraph. The military campaigns planned by this group had local game clubs conducting activities within their chosen map area of a large world map. Conflicts occurred between different wargame clubs, such as cross-border raids, and battles being played annually at the Wargame Convention Gen Con in Lake Geneva. In some cases, one group could ask that another group have their own players act as proxies for one of these military incursions between groups located far apart from each other. So, first of all, that's part of the culture that we have just lost, right? The idea of in-person gaming clubs that operate in a shared, larger combat sphere that, I mean, this patron play, right? You put a player in charge of a domain, and they get to do all the diplomacy they want, a Bronstein, if you will, or Bronstein-like, or whatever we're going to call those nowadays. And then when things break down, break out your minis and do the miniature battle, right? And this point right here, to where they would just send a message to the twin or to Chicago and say, hey guys, or not Chicago, Lake Geneva. They send a message, say, hey guys, one of our dudes in the north in Blackmoor. So you see, Gary Gygax had his own campaign going, the Great Kingdom, and everyone just kind of carved out a piece of that map. And he said, you know, the Twin Cities guys would be like, hey, things have come to a head, and we have sent, you know, a couple warlords with their bands down into the south. Can you get some of your guys to play them, and your other guys can defend, and then you just tell us what happened? And they like trusted them with their characters, they trusted them with their forces, and it was all part of this ongoing. I don't know how you do that with pause time. I don't know how you get that to work. Sorry, my hairy arm is in the light. I don't know how you get that to work if everybody's not marching forward on the same calendar. And I feel like the 1071, 1072 kind of, the year kind of backs that up. So that's my take on it. Again, I am correctable on this. Griff, if you want to come on the show again and straighten me out on that, you have an open invitation, my brother. But so the next thing I wanted to talk about, again, I'm not showing you guys everything. You got to buy the book if you want to see, but there's just so many fascinating things here. All right, so looking at the document, some things stand out to me. Section 2, he's talking about the area known as Jenkins Land is ruled by Sir Jenkins, while Bill Hoyt rules Williamfort. Ed Wernke rules Swampwood. So you get a map, you get all of these player-owned domains, and then you get some NPC factions, Scandarians. I think those are Scandinavian. The Red Wizards Coven, the Picts. So it seems like, they got the Arax. It seems like and you get friendly forces as well. So each local landowner has certain troops. In a military sense, our lands have little in the way of men-at-arms, and our peasants are few and poor. Fortunately, our very danger has its advantages, since the young knights eager for action, as well as those of less noble, who seek fame and rank, flock to the area in hopes of glory and action. This also means an abundance of persons owing allegiance to no man, which has led to past warlords to become sources of trouble to the crown. In general, each local landowner can muster 12 bowmen, 16 militia pikemen, 10 unarmored swordsmen, 2 knights, 2 squires, 8 mounted men-at-arms, 6 archers, 4 armored pikemen, 4 axemen, 20 swordsmen, and 3 remounts. So they're even to the point of resupply and remounts from when their horses get winded. The Baron's personnel troop also include an additional 6 armored pikemen and 10 dismounted men-at-arms, over and above a force equal to that the individual landowners command. So the Barons get everything included plus a little extra. So I mean, this is the wargaming stuff, right? What are your forces? What is the part of the map that you control? What's your land, and what are the forces at your command that you can protect it with? And then we get enemy forces. It says enemy forces vary in size and composition depending on a random level of troops assembled for the task at hand. Although generally only small raids are to be expected, there is a chance for large-scale operations by royal forces at the discretion of the local baron, and then in parentheses, in other words, when there are enough players. DA for Dave Arnson. So, if you guys are wondering how to put your own stuff together, like maybe you hanker for these days gone by where we had large, I'm trying to hold this without blocking the light, large forces, patron domains, large clubs working with each other. I'm telling you, this stuff seems way more interesting than a small band of get-along gang goes into the dungeon and comes out. The decisions you have to make, the alliances and double crosses and things, and I'm telling you, I know that not everybody sees eye to eye on this stuff, but there's one group in gaming that is playing with these themes, and I think you guys know who they are. They come with an infamous hashtag, right? Their name is a killing word, as it were. So the next thing I want to jump you to, there's sections here that are, you get cartography, you get some just gorgeous maps. I'm not going to show them. You got to buy the book if you want to see them. But I'm going to jump to page 15. We have a city of Blackmoor here. And the thing that stands out to me here is, here, let me get this in the sunlight for you. Sorry, this is way unprofessional. I'm on vacation here, guys. Cut me some slack here. This map was used early on in the Blackmoor campaign. The copy presented here has adventure notes on it by David McGarry, author of Dungeon, family board game, for his character McDuck, the thief who famously tunneled into the merchant's storehouse to loot all the goods. It should be noted how Blackmoor was likely a blend between what is called a Braunstein game. Sorry, they probably pronounce it Braunstein. Braunstein TM. Braunstein game and what we call a role-playing game during this stage in time. Braunstein games favor a mixed play style that involves both alliances and enmities. PvP. What does this remind you guys of? There's just so many, there's resonance here, right? You get the fun of diplomacy, you get the fun of a war game, and you get the fun of being in charge of individual players and role-playing what their purview is. During this stage in time. So during this time, it was blended between a Braunstein game and a role-playing game. Braunstein games favor a mixed playstyle that involves both alliances and enmities. Thus, When David McGarry looted the merchant storehouse, he was playing against another real person, Dan Nicholson, who was acting as the town merchant and fleecing all the adventurers by establishing high prices for adventuring equipment in all the stores in Blackmoor. So you got PvP going on. You have treacherous play. You got one player tunneling under and really getting someone back who's been fleecing all the adventurers, right? This is fascinating stuff. You guys have got to get this book. You got to read this. I'm not telling you everything that stood out to me. I'm not sharing all the good stuff. I'm just popping through some highlights so you can decide if maybe this is something you want for yourselves. All right. So we got RPG, we got PvP, and we've got some Braunstein play. Braunstein. Page 17 is my next thing that I wanted to share with you guys. Although Arneson had created role-playing with his campaign, his players were demanding constant dungeon adventures. Arneson talks about his own desire for more wargaming in Corner of the Tabletop. So here we have Arneson's newsletter, Bros Blog Receipts, right? So play sessions and stuff were something that was being shared from the beginning. And in various letters, along with being burned out as the only dungeon master up to this point. Oh, we got DM burnout. That's the first time I've heard of that, right? I mean, obviously DMs burn out all the time, but the idea that the forever DM is getting sick of just adjudicating dungeon run after dungeon run. He wants the war game. In 1972, the Blackmoor Bunch were moved to another area of Blackmoor in the south, once again transforming the domains that lay between Blackmoor and the Great Kingdom. So the DM gets bored with what's going on and resets the whole campaign. Well, that kind of stuff is still happening. That happened in Trollopolis last year, where Jeffro got sick of what was going on in Trollopolis and set us up in the infamous Who Caresville, right? So with this new iteration of Arneson's world, everyone built castles and ruled over a small domain with an army. Instead of exploring dungeons, the players now needed to clear their territories of all the monsters that lived in the wilderness and establish safe areas for agriculture in order to establish a populace. So here we are, before even D&D is a thing, in Blackmoor, we get the domain game. Arneson got sick of just going in the dungeon over and over again, and he said, let's get on the hex map scale. Right? For a short while, the map from the game Outdoor Survival is adopted as the campaign area. And you guys can see this looks very, very familiar with the angular mountains and forests and stuff. If you guys have seen that Outdoor Survival. And in OD&D, Outdoor Survival is mentioned as being one of the needed supplements to play, right? So for a short while, the map game from the game Outdoor Survival is adopted as a campaign area. As with his other wargame campaigns, such as the massive Napoleonic time period game Arneson was running at the same time as Blackmoor, it is likely his players would have needed their own copies of the map to mark where they were establishing castles, towns, and domains, as well as where they were moving themselves and their armies when war broke out. It seems having some kind of miniatures battle was always an event worth playing out. So we got DM burnout, we got domain play. And next, I want to take you to just one page over, page 19. And so we get this cool map. It's a more detailed version of the city of Blackmoor. But here's one of the other cool things you get with this book. This paragraph right here. After Arneson's game company went out of business for a variety of reasons, he was approached by Gary Gygax. It should be a surprise to many gamers today that Gary would be invited into Arneson's home to have dinner with Dave, his wife and his daughter, when by all accounts Gygax and Arneson were on far from friendly terms. Yeah, this is exactly what happened as Gary and Dave made efforts to resume at least a working friendship as the designers who brought role-playing to the world. So not only do you get the historical documents, not only do you get like a write-up of what they mean and how they fit into what was going on at the time, but you get these little cool revelations about what was really going on. a lot of people like, sorry, my bracelet's in the way. A lot of people like to talk about, all the drama and that kind of stuff. But man, it's so cool just to know that, hey, these guys were at least making an effort to still be friends, regardless of all of the business stuff that happened between them. I don't know where else you get those kind of little insights, but from people who know and people who are willing to write this stuff down and share it and put it out into the world. Lastly, I want to take us to page 33, where we get into some of the blogging of receipts. Top of 34, check this out. Guys, do you even realize what this thin strip? There will be a medieval Bronstein, April 17, 1970, at the home of David Arneson from 1300 hours to 2400 hours, with refreshments being available on the usual basis. Players may come at any time and any number are welcome to attend what should prove to be an exciting time. It will feature mythical creatures and a poker game under the Trolls Bridge between sunup and sundown. So first of all, look at that. That is a long session. April 17th. This is an invitation to the very beginning of the hobby, guys. That is just so cool that Griff found this and was able to share it with us. So here are the notices. So this is the note about notice 1 that I just showed you. And these were corner of the table. With the first notice, it is interesting how he describes the game as being a medieval Braunstein, however you guys want to say it. This is a reference to the Braunstein role-playing games originated by David Wesley in 1968, which also were later refereed by Arneson, as well as Dwayne Jenkins, who ran a Western Braunstein setting, Brownstone, Texas. Brownstone may be the first role-playing game which utilized an endless campaign format that would continue from session to session, just as is now seen with D&D. So Brownstone is a type of Braunstein, right? And it is not only a one-time, one evening session that you play and you finish and then it's over with, and if you want to play it again, you start over. It is a session to session, and in doing so, it may be considered the first role-playing game, because role-playing, one definition one could take away from this might be that role-playing games are a continuous Braunstein. Like Risk Legacy or Pandemic Legacy, where the game continues from session to session with a save state of whatever happened before impacts the next session, right? Brownstone may be the first role-playing game which utilized an endless campaign format that would continue from session to session, just as is now seen with D&D. The card game under a Troll Bridge session is remembered by some of the Blackmoor Bunch gamers, though as with all of these game sessions, not everyone was in attendance. Bob Meyer says all he can recall of the game is that he tried to attack a troll and was killed instantly. He didn't like that particular aspect of the game and did not play Blackmoor again for some time, until other players told him the game had been more fully developed and that it's better now. Check this paragraph out and put this in your pipe and smoke it. One should note that in this time period, the Blackmoor Bunch call all games utilizing role-played single characters as a Braunstein. So even Blackmoor is first known as the medieval or fantasy Braunstein. So, with that being said, there have been some appearances on YouTube channels and some assertions made about what is and is not a Braunstein. Griff himself has indicated, Wesley continues to run Braunstein and Banania, which I believe happened after Brownstone, which is another, a more modern day Braunstein, Banania, where you've got a bunch of political actors in the tropics somewhere. Anyway, so Wesley is still running these games, and he does it at conventions. And if you guys really want to check this out for yourselves, ArnieCon is the convention that Griff and the Blackmoor Bunch put on to honor Dave Arneson, and Wesley will be there, and he will be running, I believe he'll be running one, if not both of those games. So if you can at all possibly get there and see this stuff right from the source, that's pretty amazing that that's still going on. But some people believe that only that session run by that man should be called a Bronstein. And maybe it should. I just know historically we're seeing here that it used to be that everybody called this kind of play a Bronstein. Hence, Arneson saying that Blackmoor is a medieval Bronstein, in quotes. In quotes. Now, they didn't continue to call it. He says, one should note that in this time period, so that's not something they continued to call it. So there, something may have changed to where that's not what a Bronstein is anymore. So all that to be said, be careful how you use the word, because Griff has even said that he considers it disrespectful to use the word Bronstein when you're talking about running a session in your role-playing games that have multiple powerful people carving up the map and betraying each other and allying with each other and taking over and doing stuff. So just to give you a little bit of background on the term, it's still controversial. I think the people that use it are still going to go ahead and use it, and the people that think they shouldn't are still going to think they shouldn't. Maybe we should be looking for a better term so that we can all get together and agree. I'm telling you guys, the BroSR and the OSR and conventional players, we have more in common than what separates us. We like to argue about the details, but I do feel like the Venn diagram it looks like a synthwave circle, right? With just a little bit of teal on one side and a little bit of pink on the other. So here in this, I'm not going to show you any more of the secrets of this book. If you haven't seen enough to make up your mind now, I don't know what to tell you. You can find this at www.tfott.com, the Fellowship of the Thing. And that's where you can get this book, as well as the Lost Dungeons of Tannisborg and the Secrets of Blackmoor documentary. I am a fan of Griff. I know that we don't see eye to eye on everything. I love the stuff that he makes, and the especially with Wizards of the Coast coming out with a $100 book that wastes no time in just crapping on the creators on the first page with its little arm's length disclosures. This is where you want to go. You want to get to the respectful source, the guy who knows the people that were there, who can give you the straight dope. And yeah, I think that's just about all that I wanted to say about it. There is another product out there called the Barons of Blackmoor. They licensed with the Arneson estate to use that title. So there should be no controversy about that book, because they worked with Arneson, and that's significant, because as of right now at Gen Con, there is a group that is claiming to publish Arneson's work, and they are not playing nice with the estate, the Arneson estate. And you can check my Twitter, you can check Griff's Twitter for that continuing. Hopefully that one irons out and everyone get to the bottom of it. But as of right now, that one is not official. I'm not going to name it here. We'll see how that goes. But anyway, thanks for watching. Appreciate you guys being with me, even though I'm here on vacation. I don't got my usual rig. I'm not interviewing anyone. I hope to be back at it either next week or the week after. We are experiencing another audit at work, so hopefully I don't get too salty about that. Yeah, I don't know how to end these things, do I? I think I've in the past said moose out.